The classical Indian texts, or sutras, on which this tradition is founded, aim to present the spiritual realities discussed in this work in the form of an accessible parable. They tell us that Amida was originally a king who gave up his throne to become a monk, called Dharmakara, in order to save all beings. He vowed to do this by undertaking eons of practice that would give him the unsurpassable merit to create a blissful realm, the Pure Land, to which we could go after death to continue our practice toward nirvana without any suffering and under much more favorable conditions. In doing so, he vowed that he would not attain Buddhahood unless his desire to liberate suffering humanity came to fruition in this way. The story goes on to say that, as a result of the enormous merit accumulated, he fulfilled his vows and became an enlightened Buddha called Amida, which is the Japanese contraction of the Sanskrit names Amitabha, or light without end, and Amitayus, or life without measure. But instead of living in the world like the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni, he now presides over the Pure Land that was created for the sake of ordinary beings who could enter there by confidently invoking Amida's name with faith and an aspiration for nirvana. Many these days cannot accept this story as true and see it only as a metaphorical window through which we can contemplate the light of eternal reality and its workings. On the other hand, there are those who can only bring themselves to believe in it if it did take place in some sense. This is the confrontation that many religions face today between a traditional and a modern interpretation of ancient scriptures. The traditional view, having held sway for many centuries, has nurtured millions of faithful souls who clearly had no difficulty in believing its claims. This majestic story has immense power and is a very moving account of what compassion on a cosmic scale really means in tangible terms. Therefore, it should never be looked down on or belittled as a concession to inferior minds. For the spiritual certitudes it contains are very real and of the utmost importance, even if they are not considered historically factual. Given that many who find themselves attracted to Shin Buddhism see Amida as being unbounded, it is difficult for them to conceive of this reality as having an origin in time, whether in our world or any other. This is quite understandable, as it would impose a limit on what the tradition considers to be immeasurable. One way to view the story that may assist in better understanding its objectives is to see it as an unveiling of otherwise hidden truths. What the sutra does is tell us something about the attributes of Amida, which would not be obvious if we had, say, just a simple experience of this measureless light and life in our lives, as wonderful as that would be. In other words, knowing that Amida, or other power, is what sustains all genuine practice, and Amida actively pursues all beings to bring them home through the primal vow, and accepts us all without judgment or condemnation through unconditional compassion, are insights that can only be revealed to us by that reality itself. A very effective and approachable way to do this is through a sacred story, which then becomes an instrument by which to convey the deep-seated significance disclosed by these, quote, events. As such, it ought not to be regarded as a comprehensive or accurate description of ultimate reality, for which we should refer to other, more philosophical Buddhist texts dedicated to that matter. Of course, an immediate encounter with it can suggest something about this marvelous presence. For example, that it is a true refuge where we find spiritual repose in our lives, but it cannot impart everything we need to know about its intentions. Those unique aspects of the Shin teaching regarding the essence of Amida's will need to be made more explicit. This required the tradition to adopt a vehicle whereby these eternal verities could be unmistakably divulged to us. In its enlightened foresight, it settled on a particular narrative that would be easier for ordinary people to apprehend. This meant having to relate timeless truths in terms of cause and effect, and embodying numinous realities in the guise of a quasi-historical account. Therefore, the motivation behind this saving means or upaya is not in any way an arbitrary human contrivance, but the expression of Amida's profoundly loving wisdom. By such means, the story becomes an indispensable medium by which we come to know the true nature of Amida, something that cannot be discovered in any other way. Thus, we shouldn't casually dismiss this account as mere myth. Myths should not be seen as untrue just because they lack a firm historical foundation. Rather, given their otherworldly origin, such allegories are a powerful means of laying bare deep mysteries that cannot be effectively conveyed through rational, empirical, or other forms of ordinary knowledge. In the end, the highest truth will resort to any expedient necessary to declare itself.